This is a story for those who wish that they could truly read between the lines of the book they were reading and see the world of the story through the eyes of the author. For those who wish that they could make nonfiction from fiction. For those who wish that dreams were true. This is a story of a group of wayward friends who came together from the far reaches of two worlds to come together and to help make dreams reality. This is Hazeltown Story. Hello and welcome to Hazeltown Story episode 20. We're taking a quick little break from our break by recording this little episode that is much more of a narrative thing. This is not actually, there's no play in this one. There's no Genesis involved in this. This is going to be purely story. So a while back, there was a episode that I did that focused on Lila and her kind of backstory, and I figured that that's actually a good probably template for until we run out of characters to kind of basically use to kind of fill out in case there's a gap that is needed. And since there's been a break for Hazeltown Story since I already forgot when that went on break, but up until November, when we will actually have new regular episodes, I did want to do another story. This one in particular will be about the backgrounds of, two very big members of the team, Rhapsody and Lomi, because they kind of share a backstory. So it makes more sense to do both of them at once and then having individual episodes based on one or the other, because their stories are pretty intertwined. So I was planning on an episode that was the same length as Pure Hazel 1, which I think that episode was around 20 minutes. That's slightly ballooned. So this is going to be a lot longer than I was expecting it to be. But it at least gets the information out there. So the general gist of this episode is that this episode is a diary entry from Lolo, locution, not me personally, to another locution agent with Lolo being, I don't think it's actually said outright, but Lolo is a member of Loka, which I believe on some supplemental material that I mentioned that is basically the locution empire's kind of agency that they use to kind of keep an eye on things. It's the organization that sent Lolo out to Lolo/Henry out to kind of view things. And in Hazeltown, they were originally looking for Cygnus members, kind of ballooned into the, the scrying thing that's, the main plot of Hazeltown Story, so to speak. So this episode will be a diary entry from Lolo to another member of Loka that kind of describing a meeting between Rhapsody and Lomi and Lolo. That is going to be what this episode is. As I mentioned again, no kind of gameplay thing. And also I will say from this, with the amount of all that kind of went into this, there's probably only going to be one more episode until we get back on hiatus. I do want to do a tiny episode. This one will be short. Famous last words. But I'm planning on that one being short because it is basically a brief interlude for some events that happen, by some events basically, kind of set up for the returning episode, which will be in probably the second or third week in November. It's basically entirely set up. This will be a kind of background for Rhapsody and Lomi, but also kind of some of the world that they kind of come from. It'll be description of the country that actually Rhapsody and Lomi come from, because they don't come from, they're not from England, or they're not from, the Turtle Island, which is kind of where our landmass of the U.S. is, although I guess that really only matters if you're European or if you're American, like me. So like Turtle Island, or like the South America, or something like that. They're actually from a place that it's on Remus. So it is a world that we're not super familiar with. So that'll be explained here. So with that, that is going to do it for me talking. So here we go. Here is the start of this diary entry. Let's see. Is this thing looks like it is recording. All right. To Loren. Greetings from the Steinwald. It's been quite a while since I moved here, but I'm still not quite used to living in the noisy city. I know you're probably used to it, living in Liège and all, but it's certainly different than even the most busy city in Moonbeacon. So I heard you were looking for updates from my time in the CSN. So I figure that now would be a good time to tell you about that and that project I had been, roped into, kind of going by some locals here. Yeah. So figure I'd just give you a little update here, and I tell you about a meeting that I had with two of the members of that kind of project. It's about the audio magician Rhapsody and that Dr. Lomi, the one that I told you about that shares your surname. I was able to sit down with them. It turns out that their backstory is a lot more adventurous than I had first imagined. So I was recently invited by Rhapsody to come visit her at her house. It was a lovely little weekend in Hazeltown, kind of a city that's or town rather, that's kind of a little bit like 20 minutes out from Steinwald. It was a really great day to go visit her, and she has a small but pretty cozy little home. Turns out that, I found out that wasn't the only one there, because it turns out Lomi also was staying there, at least for the weekend. It seems like they have an arrangement where Lomi lives in his apartment in Steinwald, because he needs to be there doing work. I believe he works at a hospital there. Can't remember which one. But it turns out that he comes out and stays with her during the weekend. Two were very gracious hosts. Started out sitting in their living room where Lomi was reading some detective story or something. Didn't quite get a great look at the cover. But then we were talking for a while, and then I saw that they had a photo album on the table. Had a whole bunch of photos from their homeland, and they really wanted to show me. I guess they brought it out just to kind of show me. So I never been to Ida Montagna, where they're from, on Heaven's Hearth. Looks like they were telling me their little kind of region that they're from is called Valle Bianca. Practically its own city-state. It's huge. It covers this entirety of this valley that, from the map, it's like this giant sea that's in the middle of a kind of a mountain branch, or a mountain range. It's like this huge, like 1,000 square mile kind of area. Area actually gets apparently referred to as, I believe in Italian, La Tana Infinita, which I think translates roughly to the Infinite Warren, because apparently it's a mostly lagomorphic population, rabbit and pika. It turns out they're actually really good too at making their homes like underground. Underneath, there's a huge kind of forested area, and even has it going into the mountains itself. I think that actually there was a trick that I know that they had back when, eons ago. They had really good locution ties, so we were able to kind of teach them how to get into the mountain, and they have some really elaborate kind of inner mountain like cities and all that. So Rhapsody was telling me about her kind of home city first. Little nice little quaint little place called Snowcap. The pictures she showed me showcased like miles of buildings laid into the sloping mountains. Just as far as I can see, it's just like this giant stone metropolis. Like, it almost seemed like it was natural in the mountain. It was kind of fascinating. And it was just, I need to see it this one point. Well, we'll get to it later, maybe a little once some trouble kind of settles down. And Lomi, also after Rhapsody showed me hers, he kind of had some photos as well of his hometown. his hometown was actually inside of one of those in that mountain range. Actually, the mountain that's actually that snowcap rests on. And his city was actually just called Greyhaven. It used to be this old mining town that actually, when the mines kind of ran out a long time ago, turned into a huge cultural and technological kind of epicenter, where basically there was these huge elaborate uses of radionics and technomancy that they even had like these underground farms so that they could have, it's really snowy there, so they had these large underground farms that a lot of them grow crops even in like the coldest of winter, and like had these really elaborate underground living areas that could fit a huge amount of people there. Very dense living areas. Really, really fascinating. Like almost as dense here as here in the Steinwald. They really know how to pack people in really nice compact areas. And yeah, I also got a chance to see kind of their families. That was really nice because there's a level of film I always like seeing people's family. Kind of, gives you kind of a tie to them. Yeah, especially when you see like pictures of like their parents and all that. I was able to like, it was a really great time because I was actually able to ditch the Henry disguise basically the moment that I walked through the door, because they knew actually pretty soon after I met them. I kind of didn't realize that Lomi could kind of see through my disguise. He's he has a really good he's a practicing animancer, so he has a really good beat on people's magical signals, and yeah, kind of hard to disguise that. So thankfully they're pretty good about, I trust them to keep that kind of secret. Well, hopefully. It'd be very bad if that got out, and I really don't want to have anything happen to them. Nonetheless, yeah, you could tell they did not have that much experience with locusts, especially undisguised ones. I'm pretty sure we have a few of us kind of walking around they probably didn't even notice. But yeah, I think this was probably their first view of seeing an actual, undisguised locust in a kind of, such a homey environment, I guess. Yeah, and I guess we kind of got to chatting after the photo album. So I wanted to put the, faces to names and all that. So I basically got looking a little bit into their backstory, and they were very gracious and told me kind of their little backstory. So Rhapsody went first. She was born on May 4th, 246. Her mother, Flora, was a baker, and her father, Nestor, was a musician, pianist to be specific. She was the second of 4 kids. She had an older brother named Lyric, a younger sister named Melody, and a younger brother named Rondo. It turns out that her birth name actually was Rana, but when her brother Rondo was born, she kind of felt it was unfair that basically she was probably the only musical child in the family, and didn't really make a whole lot of sense that, the musical one was the one who didn't have a musical name. So she asked her father to what he thought of it, and he actually came up with the name Rhapsody, based on one of his favorite songs to play, Rhapsody in Blue by Gershwin. Father said that it reminded her that, she reminded him of the song. If you've ever heard the song, somewhat chaotic and full of life, a handful to kind of keep under control, yet beautiful and a piece of art in its own way is kind of how she phrased his words. Yeah, that I think that she kind of gets a kick out of that, put a big smile on her face, and based on Lomi's reaction, kind of agreed with the sentiment. Lomi's family is a little bit more straightforward. He was born on October 29th of 243. Lomi's father, Ben, was a doctor and animancer just like he was. Turns out that he's actually, one of those familial line of jobs where basically his father was a doctor and his father before him, or his grandfather was a doctor, goes down quite far apparently. While his mother Claire was just a housewife. She didn't really do anything, other than raise him, which is, job on its own, but no occupation, it seems. His name actually kind of comes from his parents actually kind of got a little bit indecisive on what to name him, apparently. His father wanted to name him Michelle, while his mother wanted a more warrior name of Loic. So when they couldn't kind of come to a decision, they decided on Lomi, because it allowed them to have, basically a nice mix of the two, and a nice cadence when spoken. Lomi Loisel. Although, now that I think about it, they probably could have done Milo, but Milo Loisel just kind of doesn't have the nicer ring to it. He did have a younger brother named Remy, who is, I believe he said that he was currently studying to be an animancer as well. And once Remy finishes school, he's planning on actually moving his family out of here, to get away from the troubles in the area. And apparently also while they're going to do that, they're also going to try and get some of Rhapsody's family to come over here as well. Turns out that Melody was planning on coming over here once she's done with school. I think Rhapsody said that she was probably in her junior or senior year of college, so probably will be coming in a year or two. And basically, Rondo is currently studying abroad in Moonbeacon as well. Lyric, however, apparently he and his family are determined to kind of stay in Valle Bianca to kind of help with the ruling government should it stabilize. And then apparently she's just once more of the family's going to come over. Rhapsody's family or parents have a kind of they're rooted in the area, so that once Melody and Rondo decide where they're going to stay, Rhapsody might move them out over here as well. We chatted for their families for a little bit, and then obviously the two of them are very. They don't really show it. They're not really a huggy kissy kind of couple, but they definitely really care for each other. So I was kind of curious how they actually met, because I saw a lot of pictures of them together even back home. Apparently, Lomi kind of told a story. Rhapsody, I think, was testing him to see how much he remembered. He met her when he was 14 and she was 12. Or he was, 10. Apparently Lomi and Rhapsody's mothers were actually old schoolmates. And while Rhapsody's family was visiting Greyhaven, they visited and brought Rhapsody along with them. And ever since then, the two of their personalities kind of match in a weird way, or not weird way, but they matched kind of almost perfectly in such a way they kind of became friends pretty quickly. And then basically they were friends for quite a time, and then things eventually turned romantic when once Rhapsody turned 18. Apparently she had some partners before, but nothing really stuck. I think she kind of knew that in her heart of hearts that basically Lomi was the guy for her. They'd been together ever since, through kind of some troubled times in their area. Lomi mentioned actually that they were thinking about getting married when moving here, but they decided that actually that probably wouldn't be too much of a shock. But they're already getting used to a society that they've never even heard of, lived in. So that'd be kind of a huge shock to also get married, is trying to deal with that as well. Although Rhapsody has it in her head that Lomi doesn't want to marry her because Lomi wants to knock her up. I could tell from a chuckle that maybe there was a little bit, but it was very interesting seeing him get flustered. Considering how straight-laced he seems to be. Rhapsody, you can tell, knows how to get him riled up. So it was funny kind of seeing that. He's usually a very stuck-up person. But it was nice to actually see him get almost a little jokey at the time. And we took a look at the photo album a little while, kind of once we put that kind of away. She actually gave us kind of a brief tour of the house, because we actually took the conversation outside a little bit, because while her house was a nice little 2-bedroom, 2-bath affair, it's actually kind of a very small part of the plot. She actually has a huge fenced-in backyard. Took in, it's like the backyard takes up like 2/3 of the entire plot. And yeah, she had a very nice little garden with plenty of fruits and like plenty of vegetables that she likes to, use in cooking. And a nice little gazebo actually in the back with a daybed. Even has a nice little small artificial pond. I asked her how she managed to get such a nice house. And she told me that when she was applying for housing here, that the housing department, when they were actually, after they had, started the immigration process, then they were looking for a house. They apparently wanted to get younger couples to move to Hazeltown, kind of get more younger people in the area. Apparently, it used to be the Hazeltown's kind of used to be notorious for being kind of an old people town, but they're trying to kind of get the youth, so to speak, in there to kind of help diversify the area, trying to boost its art scene to kind of get a little side thing outside the Steinwald. And yeah, so basically they knew that she mentioned that she was planning, that she, was in a steady relationship with Lomi. So in kind of expectation that maybe one day will actually get married, they kind of gave her this house. And it seemed like kind of going in the area, it seems like this kind of spacious area, not a whole lot of houses there. The one thing I've noticed about the CSN is that they really know how to pack people in pretty quick, pretty condensely. They really know how to kind of use the area, this nice little planned area full of kind of houses. Kind of a lot nicer than God, it's like seeing those suburbs in America the time that I've been there. It's just so, there's like, they actually put artistry into their houses here. It's kind of fascinating. Even in the suburbs, it's still actually, not every house looks identical. It's actually very nice. And yeah, she actually told me that she kind of wanted an area, like she really wanted kind of a fenced in area or like a really big backyard because, Valle Bianca, I mean, if you think about the Italian for it, it's, White Valley. It's really cold out there and really snowy. So having an outside garden for her was really neat. So really happy that she was able to get there. And actually, one thing that she did mention, she didn't show me it because that would be a little bit awkward, at least for someone just still getting to know each other. But actually, she's trying to maybe at one point get into a naturist lifestyle. With it being cold, it's you kind of need clothes there, and trying to, do the whole naturist thing's kind of a not good idea. And yeah, one thing she likes here is that it allows her to be, freer in her choice of clothing, or I guess in this case, lack thereof. But nonetheless, she wasn't trying to do this for any. She actually has a very specific purpose for this. Wasn't in any way sexual or anything. She's not trying to, get into one of those kind of, there's a lot of cults here, but not trying to get into one of those weird things. It's actually apparently a pretty big tenet apparently they're actually more religious than I thought, because apparently both of them practice Benukian animism, which I'm not sure. It's mostly a thing that was really only in the Heaven's Hearth area, and I'm not super familiar with it myself. But I think I kind of had the general gist of it. It's not super complicated. The name comes from the native language of Runkin's word for tribute. Big kind of core concept of it is basically revolving around something that the self is a spirit that is driving a kind of the body, that the spirit is the more important thing. The body is just this vessel for this world. And the spirit is constantly in a battle between light and dark. And the kind of a lot of religions have good actions, feed the light, and bad actions feed the dark. I'm not super familiar with what those good and bad actions are, but basically it's that general concept. And yeah, Rhapsody actually mentioned that her brother Lyric was actually a great teacher of that religion back home. And she actually worries about that because part of the troubles back home actually has something to deal with, Benukian animism, and kind of, it's not stranglehold, but it's a big thing back there. And I'm not certain if you've been keeping an eye on the Heaven Hearth's troubles, but just in case you haven't, I'll give you a brief rundown. You know the Irish troubles? You know the problems that are going on in Ireland at the moment? Imagine that, but with even more factions. Part of the name of Heaven's Hearth, you know, it's not just the fact that it's really high in the heavens, but, you know, heaven is a huge part of it because religion, in particular Benukian animism, plays a massive part in the cultures in the area, including its political structure. Basically, like Nina Montagna and where Bianca Via Bianca and like all those areas over there, religion actually plays a huge part in their their political system. So it's been part of it for like centuries, if not millennia. And you know, recently, I think now that, you know, there's been a more global push, kind of more, you know, it's the world's becoming more global, not so, not so in their own area. Basically, there's been tries to kind of push and secularize the area when trying to make a government that's not, you know, focused on this religion, and kind of trying to democratize it a little bit more and not have, you know, religious leaders be the rulers and have it, you know, be just like political leaders. And it's actually interesting because those, you know, when people kind of came up with the ideas for trying to secularize the religions, you know, the ruling government actually didn't really have a huge problem with it. It was kind of, you know, it was a very popular idea that was kind of grown, you know, locally and organically, to kind of really change how the government of the areas kind of, you know, kind of become this one unit, and kind of it could almost be a call to like get countries to kind of become one and kind of increase kind of the presence of Heaven's Hearth in kind of the global, you know, society. And yeah, also pretty large, basically another kind of problem in the area is, you know, that area is kind of contested at the moment. Basically, it's kind of somewhere close to the Song Plains, so, you know, and also it's kind of almost in between, you know, the Song Plains and kind of the whole region that the Asayan Empire is kind of trying to, you know, increase. So they have these two neighbors that are trying to almost kind of getting into their area, and they're wondering whether or not they should actually ally with one or the other, because Heaven's Hearth, the countries there have been very allied with the Cushion Sovereignty Alliance. And yeah, the thing is that they've kind of always wanted, you know, basically they wanted to be kind of on their own thing, but kind of they're wondering if they kind of are going to have to, for survival, kind of ally with one or the other. And yeah, once the Soviet Pact and the pro-Euro-American alliance kind of got a whole, like, kind of figured out that this was going on, they do what they've been doing great and starting out their psyops. And yeah, basically all hell is starting to break loose, and splinter groups are, you know, starting to form. So yeah, the most notable groups were kind of labeled the Blue and Red Scarves, which are kind of, you know, the more problem children of these groups that formed. Not outright backed by any nation. Basically, they're really gung-ho for trying to get alliances with certain countries and trying to basically get them to join already existing pacts. The color is kind of pretty obvious who they're trying to favor. Let's see. The Red Scarves basically feel that, you know, all the nations of Heaven Hearth, you know, each of them kind of have their own kind of communal culture, but why don't we just kind of take that culture and just kind of shove it to the side? You know, just completely become gung-ho on, you know, the work of Marx, just abandon the religion, abandon everything, just kind of go ahead and become a good old Marxist nation and just kind of join the Soviet Union just like all the other nations. Although, it seems like generally if you kind of get hold of them, basically, they have a definition of Marxism that's kind of interesting, almost kind of authoritarian, and kind of missing the whole democratic thing. But nonetheless, they are very, very adamant with their kind of views, and almost have even like a cult-like reference to the thing that even the song planes kind of feel like they're kind of going a little bit overboard. Yeah, so there's red scarves. Blue scarves, pretty much complete opposite. Just this whole culture, this whole communal thing, just kind of toss that aside, and why don't we just kind of become nice old capitalist nations? Just kind of exploit everything in our mountains and just kind of sell it on the free market. Who bothers with kind of that? Just kind of join and become a nice part of just a nice little puppet state of the Saiyan Empire. Just because, they're going to overrun us anyway. So why don't we just go ahead and join them? Yeah, neither of these two are particularly popular with the people. They have less than probably 10% of the support in the entire country, like any of them. Basically, the problem with the Red Scarves is that you're basically supporting a regime or an ideal that's basically kind of against the majority of the religious population. Yeah, like everyone there is practically, if not Banukian Asimism, one of the other religions in the area, which kind of do not really like the Song Plains Union, or particularly the Soviets in the Song Plains. That whole Silence of the Song Plains incident kind of left a sour taste in their mouth. And yeah, the blue scarves have a problem basically supporting, they're largely communal societies, and they don't do capitalism there. They just kind of, like to support each other, and the free market never really was an idea there. They kind of were pretty fine on their own, kind of, having a nice supporting culture that kind of, that's not going to really work out for them. And yeah, although they're not really popular, basically they have enough of a presence to kind of cause problems with the progression, because, if you kind of try and support one thing, you might just be actually a secret member of that, one of the Scarves organization, kind of working there. The Scarves are basically boogeymen for kind of the opposing sides, that when, that whole lovely thing of someone has a point that you don't like, oh, there must be a member of the Scarves or kind of trying to support them. So, yeah, that's kind of having a problem with, the actual, the people with, their head on tight, actually forming the good transition plans. There are actually some pretty decent ideas in the area. But yeah, also doesn't help when you have, false, like, basically, just like the occasional assassination, the occasional bombing, and, just general political peril. That really kind of also hurts, having a normal life there. And yeah, it also doesn't help the fact that with the red and blue scarves kind of appearing, another faction called the green scarves appeared, which, basically, now you have your diehard Banukian animists kind of saying, we should just completely abandon any secularization and become even more, basically give the leaders of the religion even more power. And yeah, it only really adds to this whole, rendering the area a complete political nightmare. So yeah, basically in a nutshell, extremist factions are conducting terror attacks every day against their enemies, or they're attacking themselves in false flag operations. Just a complete nightmare. Usually doesn't go by a week without a bombing. It's actually really kind of bad. Anyway, I tell you that because I was actually curious if they were actually involved in any of that, because they've only been in Hazeltown for probably about a couple of years, so they were actually living in Valle Bianca during those incidents. And yeah, I was wondering if they actually had any, relationship with it. I kind of was curious because after seeing Rhapsody in that latest mission, she knows how to use a gun. And, I'm pretty sure that in musical they don't teach you how to use a knife and gun. So I was kind of curious if they actually had any, experience with anything going on over there. And after they kind of whispered to themselves for a little bit, Rhapsody guided me towards, their spare room. And yeah, her spare bedroom, actually, she uses it mostly, like, I walked in and basically she has a ton of instruments. She's currently studying to become, basically, she's already a entry-level audio magician, but she's kind of, I guess, you have your kind of compared it. She kind of essentially has her bachelor's, so to speak, but she's trying to go for quote-unquote graduate, even like graduate level audio magic studies at a local academy. I don't remember exactly which one she went to, but nonetheless, the room was really actually has a whole bunch of instruments. This really nice compact piano. She had a ton of flutes, a few types of horns. But yeah, kind of against the other wall where she was keeping her instruments, there was this really elaborate locked armoire that basically once she kind of, before she even opened it, she basically asked me, she kind of asked me a question. What does a scarf mean to you? And I kind of played dumb, kind of knowing where this kind of thing was going. And I said, oh, it's something for winter to get you nice and toasty. But yeah, I knew something was in that armoire, and, turns out I was right. Upon opening the armoire, I realized that this wasn't just your normal armoire for storing things. This was a gun rack, and a very elaborate one. In the center of this rack was actually kind of a glass thing with a really nice pistol in the center of it. And basically there was kind of an area to the right that stored kind of, looks like they had like 3 rifles to the side. Rhapsody actually said that, basically because of the last 2 years of living during the Troubles in Valle Bianca, they kind of, even though Hazeltown's pretty safe, they kind of, the problem is they kind of have that, thing where they don't feel safe unless they're kind of armed. But yeah, they were planning on just, like, they know that they're safe here, but it just doesn't feel right to them. Like that lingering feeling just kind of never left them. Actually kind of sad. But yeah, they actually decided that even though they kind of felt weird being unarmed, they want to actually turn that fear of being unarmed and basically, if they're going to harm themselves, they might as well actually, make practical use of it. The pistol that she had in the case was actually, it's a very elaborate, like it's a very nice one. And it's actually the pistol I recognized her using on that mission with Cygnus last time that I told you about. It was a P210, basically even like a P210 modified for match purposes. That probably one of the most accurate semi-automatics around. That is not a combat pistol. That is more of a match pistol. And basically above that case were 2 tiny little trophies that had her name on it for 2nd and 3rd place in, accuracy things. Lomi even mentioned that he's more useful with rifles, and to the side they had a few, very hunting rifles. They're not getting into like the military gear. And yeah, basically they're trying to become sportsmen, I guess. They kind of are using their experience with weapons to kind of for more practical purposes. And I did actually also look to the left, and I did see, how they actually managed to have the weapon knowledge, because it turns out that right next to, kind of right above the trophies, there was actually a placard that had a whole bunch of medals. And right next to that was a photograph of a much younger, or not much younger, probably about 6 or 7 years older picture of Lomi in a Greyhaven Civil Guard uniform. Turns out that he was a member of the local kind of sort of a police force, although it kind of is more military focused. That actually, when the Heaven Hearth's troubles began, he originally wasn't planning on becoming the Civil Guard, but then eventually there was an incident in which the Red Scarves actually kind of bombed the temple that he practiced at, and which kind of enraged him and kind of realized that he needed to do something to kind of protect his home. So he joined the Civil Guard. And he was even learning how to be an animancer at this point too. This actually apparently was a really good way. It's actually the way that the Greyhaven Society worked is that it allowed him to work as a combat medic, essentially. There's some incident and basically Lomi can be on the field and kind of trying to, doctor people up before they could, rush them to like a hospital or something. And it also turned out that Lomi's actually, a pretty good, soldier, which he also helped with patrols for kind of keeping an eye out in the city for seeing if there's any, ne'er-do-wells trying to, blow some scarf was trying to blow up something or, cause problems. And yeah, he was a member of the Civil Guard for about 4 years. And he seemed like he had a good number of awards, some Valor medals that I'm not super familiar with, but they looked really shiny. And especially a couple medals that he kind of specifically pointed out as basically being their version of the Purple Heart. He apparently received actually the armor that they have there kind of would prevent most things, but he did actually get shot twice in the shoulder. Apparently got a really nasty stab wound. But, when you're an animancer, thankfully, you can deal with your own wounds pretty quickly. You don't have to wait for a medic when you're actually the medic. Also, apparently, he's pretty hardy because he didn't even realize he got shot when he originally did. Just when he realized his shoulder wasn't working as well. And then he looked down and saw the blood and was like, oh, I probably should do something about that. And yeah. And I was wondering if you could tell me the story of how he actually got that. And basically, he told me that it kind of came out of an assassination attempt. He was on patrol, and basically he was on patrol in one part of the city, and then on kind of the other side, some Blue Scarf members tried to assassinate a Red Scarf member, and basically kind of turned on into a full-on firefight. It originally started with just like 3 guys attacking like 2, and basically at the end of the day, like there were 60 different scarves of the different colors kind of fighting in the like really around this tavern that the Red Scarves were kind of holed up in. Basically there were all sorts of things kind of being thrown around, improvised explosives, some Molotov cocktails, guns, knives, even axes apparently. Didn't also help that the Green Scarves also got involved and tried to torch the tavern down for trying to be supportive of one of the Scarf groups. And basically, when Lomi was called in, they were basically the Scarves almost had a truce or a ceasefire. They saw that the Civil Guard came in and basically started just taking pot shots at him immediately. Though it seems like apparently Lomi kind of there were 6 accounted cases where he was actually personally involved or responsible for incapacitating 6 of them. And yeah, that's where he got his medal. Basically, one of them managed to get some pot shots past his armor and kind of caused those wounds. And the nice thing, apparently he was actually, once he actually got them down, he actually was able to rush over to them, and that's about 4 of them, but 2 of them he, couldn't save. Apparently he told me that one of them took a pretty square shot in the face, and even he can't solve that. He said it was pretty nasty scene. And yeah, apparently it seemed kind of weird to me, but apparently the Civil Guard tradition is, or at least what they were adopting, was that take out a scarf, you get the scarf. Because I guess with their terrorist thing that they were actually carrying, like the scarves were kind of, tradition, like metaphorical at first. Apparently they were actually starting to carry scarves at one point, which, whatever, kind of weird, but he actually was able to keep some of them as, kind of trophies, which I felt weird because he was kind of practicing to be a doctor at that point, and, most of our doctors are kind of, at least, especially you, probably more familiar with the European kind of thing of the Hippocratic Oath. And yeah, he had like 25 of these things in a box in his armoire. And basically, I kind of was wondering, I was like, how do you feel about being a doctor and, having to hurt or kill people, I guess? And basically, he the way that he kind of felt it, I thought was kind of interesting. He felt that as a healer, it was his job to ensure a healthy environment. And when you have, complete zealots roaming around hurting people for the sake of your cause, it's not exactly, causing the healthiest environment to be. So basically, he decided that if he joined the Self-Guard, that he could clean up the kind of virus of these scarves in the area. And basically, being part of the Self-Guard, also, he could, learn, he could take up residency in a hospital and kind of, learn how to become a doctor that way. But he wanted to be on the scene, kind of making sure that the moment that people got hurt, that he was there to kind of help. And yeah, he felt that each one of these scars was one less person on the street willing to kill someone, or, basically being a puppet for some foreign entity, which Lomi was very, seemed like he really loved his home a lot, and seeing basically his, countrymen kind of becoming these kind of puppets for a foreign entity really pissed him off. And yeah, his eyes were red already, like they're naturally red, but I could see the fire in his eyes. He was really getting worked up over this. And Rhapsody was nodding him kind of fairly, like basically kind of nodding along, but yeah, it seemed like he or she wanted to kind of, get him to calm down a little bit. And then actually, she kind of surprised me when she showed me her own trophies. Because it turns out that one of the best matches, she was actually not in Snowcap when these things were going on. She actually was in Greyhaven as well. Not only to be close to Lomi, but also apparently Greyhaven has one of the best kind of audio magic schools in the region. So she was there to basically learn as a musician and kind of started her studies at like the most unfortunate time. And yeah, she also kind of felt a sense of duty. The kind of bombing incident kind of bothered her a lot too. And the thing was that she really didn't feel like she could be a soldier, so she didn't really want to abandon her studies, but she did want to find some way to help. And basically, she kind of asked Lomi repeatedly to kind of like figure out some way that she could help. Lomi didn't want to kind of get her, like, Lomi wanted her to be safe and not have to bother with it, but he kind of finds something that eventually relinquished and kind of found her a spot on a group that was called the Couriers. And the Couriers are basically kind of filling a very specific need in the area. That's actually kind of neat. Basically, during the Troubles, going in at night basically meant that you're basically gambling with your life at that point. You're either going to run into a scarf group or some opportunist. Basically, it's not a very good idea to kind of go out at night during these troubled times. So there's kind of a need to kind of get things back and forth from the city. And it turns out that one of the it's a very technomancy learned area. So there are a lot of technomancers kind of in the area. And what they kind of figured out is they were actually able to kind of take a special suit, kind of the scout suit that you might have seen, kind of similar to our kind of full body kind of cloth suit. And basically what they were able to learn is basically how to kind of mask it and kind of almost make it turn invisible. If not invisible, not really invisible, but kind of, really good camouflage. And basically the Couriers were a group that kind of outfitted people with these suits and kind of used them to kind of run back and forth around town, even providing guard services in some cases. And Rhapsody actually had a little bit of a knowledge of technomancy. As she kind of taught herself how to use it. She thought it was really neat when she was a teen. So she kind of taught herself how to use it. And basically, she was able to the Couriers were actually able to teach her how to use this kind of skill to turn herself invisible. And basically, technomancy actually apparently draws from the same thing that the audio magic does. And she was able to use her kind of, power for there and able to kind of use these technomanic tricks pretty easily. And when she basically joined the Couriers, Lomi realized that she knew Rhapsody, he knew Rhapsody, so he knew that she was probably going to maybe get into trouble a little bit, and just kind of wanted to make sure that she was safe. So Lomi actually gifted her a Browning High Power and a survival knife. make sure she was able to defend herself. Apparently, even back then, her mother actually was able to. Even though she was a baker, she actually hunted for a good bit. So actually, she was kind of an amateur butcher apparently. So she hunted a lot, and one of the first things that her mother kind of taught her was basically how to hunt. And she actually knew how. She kind of never really liked rifles, but she really apparently took to learning how to use a pistol. So she kind of knew how to use one already. But since the Silver Guard was kind of required to use kind of a lot of different firearms, Lomi was actually able to even teach her more how to use a pistol. So apparently she was actually really good with it just out of the beat. And yeah, she is actually really good at being a courier and was able to get a lot of her runs done without any incidents. But there is actually a few times where actually it wasn't her life in danger, but she kind of run across someone who was actually about to get into danger. And basically, there's actually a few times that she was able to actually use her audio magic to kind of subdue people harmlessly. She's really good at putting people to sleep, which I guess how she, that's why she was part of this, scrying project anyway, was she was able to kind of knock people out. But unfortunately, there were a few cases where she kind of had to use her weapons that she was given. And some of them did end up, basically, she did end up having to kill a few of the people. She wasn't really proud of that, but she did what she had to do, especially when she was doing it to protect some innocent party that really, unfortunately, had to go out, and basically one of the Scars group was kind of menacing them. And yeah, I could tell after we were having this conversation that the tone was kind of becoming a little dour. So I changed the subject. Basically, I was kind of curious at why they decided to kind of wanted to leave the home, or leave kind of via Bianca and Snowcap and Gravehaven. Basically, after these incidents, Lomi decided to he was kind of done with being the Silver Guard. He actually felt like as he's kind of going on that he was kind of he could see himself kind of becoming really in a bad headspace. So he knew that basically, he really wanted to be a doctor. And if he was going to continue doing this thing where he occasionally had to kill people, he really didn't want to do that. So he decided to leave the Silver Guard and basically abandoned becoming a medical doctor. Although, because he was also a member of the military of Nina Montoya, apparently he actually received a very special honor because he was simultaneously, at that point, almost had received his doctorate, and basically also being a member of the honor. There is a special thing called the Cross of Valor, who was presented to those who basically have done three different things. Basically being a member of the military, acting as a silver servant, basically as like a firefighter or a doctor or something, and also being a former shaman, of part of the Banukian animism religion, which he actually drew. That is actually because he was an animancer, he actually kind of became a form of shaman. And basically they decided after Lomi resigned from the Silver Guard, and basically after Rhapsody kind of finished her studies, basically they chose the CSN and the Steinwald, basically because the CSN and the Nida Montagna actually had a treaty that allowed free movement between the countries, basically allowed for really easy citizenship. And basically, Lomi was actually able to use his Cross of Valor when migrating over to CSN and say basically that he was a doctor. And basically, he got through immigration incredibly quickly. Apparently, the CSN was it took him almost a week. And basically, he was completely ready to move. And basically, Rhapsody got her basically when they immigrated, that basically Rhapsody was able to kind of get a job as a student teacher at Steinwald Academy of Music and audio magic, to basically kind of get her on her master kind of thing for basically becoming a full music teacher. And basically, once we kind of chatted about that, kind of decided to kind of move on to kind of more pleasant and more future things. So we went back to the living room, and it turned out there was apparently at this point, a good movie had started on TV. So we kind of sat around and watched it. I kind of forgot what the movie was. And basically after that, we played a few card games. And, after a few hours of doing that, I decided that it was probably a good time for me to get home. So I thanked my guest and just kind of left. So yeah, that was my meeting with Rhapsody and Lomi. I wasn't expecting those two to quite have the story that they did, but it turns out looks can always be deceiving. Rhapsody seemed to be so sweet and happy, but actually it turns out that she can be, deadly serious when she needs to be. And also Lomi is kind of, straight-laced and seemed kind of aloof, not really jokey, but it turns out that he has a very passionate heart, and whether that becomes love or hate, or not hate, but love or, I guess, anger in this case, ready to do even something that he kind of finds distasteful if it really gets what he needs to be done. Turns out that he can turn that on pretty much instantly. But yeah, I look forward to kind of getting to know these two more. Maybe they have even more interesting stories to tell about them. So yeah, just wanted to kind of keep you posted on kind of my finds here, which actually, speaking of finding things, I did think I might have found your friend that you mentioned that you knew lived around here. I found you mentioned that he was a park ranger and that you kind of forgotten his name, but I found a park ranger that kind of seemed to kind of match the description that you gave them. And he actually helped us. It was a very big help during that Cygnus mission. I didn't mention that I knew someone here, but yeah, I didn't really have a good chance to, but maybe if I see him again, I'll ask him about you. But yeah, if you need me to look into him, I can. And though I kind of wish you told me how you met, I'm kind of curious how you knew someone across the globe, even across different planets. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for me. I hope things continue to be well with you. This is Lolo signing out. Thank you for listening to Hazeltown Story. If you would like to get updates on this show and many other shows hosted by me, LoloDePuzlo, you can follow at Hazeltown Story on Twitter. And if you would like to get to know me more from a personal standpoint, you can follow my personal Twitter at LoloDePuzlo. If you would like to watch this be recorded live, you can go to twitch.tv/LoloDePuzlo and follow the channel for notifications of when this show, as well as other shows like Retro Rank Rhapsody, are being recorded. If you would like to add this podcast to your podcatcher of choice, you can search for WLDP Hazeltown Radio and find us on most major podcatching search engines. Or you can manually add rss.hazeltown.life to your podcatcher. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come around for the next episode.